Is your department, taking up with the government that give us some indicators? How do we fix the rent?
If you have money, you invest. If you don't have money, why do you create liabilities?
I was just going through one of your recent orders. In that you mentioned that infrastructure in a school, it must correspond with the educational needs of a child.
Absolutely.
You can't, in the name of infrastructure, add things that actually don't add any value. So is there a scientific way of, a professional way of deciding on which infrastructure actually adds to, because we have these days an idea of holistic education, sports, leisure, fun, art, music, all these things are now part of education. So how do you exactly determine that which infrastructural part goes into making the education
Before
better?
we address, firstly let us see how do you build a school. What infrastructure you build there. What is really happening, I found, is that every school wants to compete with other school. They have a swimming pool, we'll also have a swimming pool. They have a basketball court, we'll also have a basketball, without looking to their finance. And they try to create burden on the students, which is not proper. See, if you have money, you invest. If you don't have money, why do you create liabilities? See, many things are laid down. Government says you must have sports, you must have other curricular activities. That's fine. Okay. But it's only possible if you have the finance.
So you mean to say if you put in this infrastructure, you should not put immediately entire burden on the students?
Absolutely.
Part of it must be
gradual. It has to be a gradual process.
It is a very gradual.
As the school grows, you start paying, you start raising. Now, what they do? Sir, we have taken loan. Oh, that's your problem. If you have taken loan, you should have seen your finances. You should have seen. You can't burden them. So one thing I must be very clear. See, whenever a school management or the owner builds a school, it is an asset for the school. It is an asset for which students are not squared. Because if you create asset, then you can open a school.
True.
You can't first admit children and then ask them that we will build a school. That's not the case. No, you cannot burden this on the students. This is the trend among many schools I have found, and I have told them that we will not give you any margin.
So that means the initial financial inputs, whether they raise the sports infrastructure, arts, music, and other allied things, this burden should not be put immediately on the students. It must be over a very long period, so that
music is sort of a service provided.
Right.
It has nothing to do with infrastructure. Right. But infrastructure means
the building, things like swimming pool, cricket ground, and sports equipment.
They are assets of the institution. You cannot tell them, okay, we are building this space. That you cannot do. If you take a loan on them, then whatever interest is, that can be, the students will have to pay that.
For example, there is a point also that somebody raises this entire infrastructure. Is he justified in demanding, let's say, minimal, at least the rent part of it, which is very minimal and which can be spread over many, classes, over many periods, say a decade, so that it doesn't look like a burden on the students? Is that allowed?
See, when they submit their these audit reports, they submit their balance sheet. It is part of the expenditure.
So you take into account that
obviously
expenditure.
That has to be taken. Whatever expenditure there, we have to take into account.
But that should be within limits, justifiable limits.
No, whatever. Rent. See, there are methods, rules provided how to assess rent. Now, what happens? There are many schools where I have seen that a landlord enters into an agreement with the tenant. We will fix 4 lakhs for this building. Understand? No, so it comes to about, he has 3 buildings, it comes about 10 lakhs per month. So 1 crore 20 lakhs. So that they cannot do. Because they are entering into an agreement to pay the rent. The tenant pays the rent to the landlord, but tenant doesn't pay. This is transferred to
goes straight away to the children, to the parents actually.
So there has to be a methodology. Some government agency must confirm that this is the rate which is payable. This cannot be permitted because it is no longer it's a law is very clear on this question that a bilateral agreement cannot bind a third party.
Right. Yeah.
So if I enter an agreement with you, this gentleman, other gentleman cannot be asked by we have entered into, please do
the burden cannot pass on to the third person. So is your department taking up with the government that give us some indicators, how do we fix the rent? Is your department?
No, it's not with us. The agencies are already in place.
Right.
R&B is there. There is a rent assessment committee.
So the schools have to take a genuine verification from the recognized government departments.
Absolutely.
In terms of the rent, they can't do it, as it pleases them. It
Obviously.
Can't be taken, obviously.
I will tell you the other side of it.
Right.
Now, supposing a school has to show that it is in loss.
Right.
It will go on raising rent.
True.
Today 10 lakh, tomorrow 20 lakhs, because agreement has to be entered between the landlord and tenant. Tenant has not to pay, so he can agree to any amount.
So the regulator is very clear in this, that unless you justify things within the framework of the law and the stipulated guidelines, we're not going to take your point.
We don't allow that.
Yeah, true.